This is the story of a creepy doll that came alive. It was 2004 when Martha found an old suitcase in the attic of her grandmother's house. Martha's grandmother had recently passed away, and now the house was being cleared out. As Martha went through the dusty suitcase, she found several old family heirlooms that hadn't been looked at in decades. But one item in particular caught her eye, a porcelain doll dressed in a Victorian nightgown. The doll was beautiful, with long flowing blonde hair, rosy red cheeks and lips, and eyes that seemed to follow you around the room. But there was something about the doll that unsettled Martha. Perhaps it was the eerie silence that seemed to emanate from it, or maybe it was the feeling that she was being watched. Whatever it was, Martha couldn't shake the feeling that this doll was not what it seemed. And as she continued to explore her grandmother's attic, she began to uncover a dark secret that had been hidden for years. Martha's grandmother was a renowned antique collector who had traveled the world in search of rare and valuable items. But as she grew older, her interests had turned darker, and she had become obsessed with all things macabre. Her home had become a shrine to death, filled with funeral masks, taxidermy, and even a human skeleton. Martha had always been fascinated by her grandmother's collection, but now she was beginning to understand the true extent of her obsession. As Martha delved deeper into her grandmother's past, she discovered that the doll was not just an antique. It was a cursed object that had been passed down through generations of women in her family. The doll's name was Isabella, and, according to legend, it was possessed by the spirit of a young girl who had died tragically. Some said that Isabella's spirit had been trapped in the doll by her grieving mother, while others claimed that the doll was actually a vessel for demonic forces. Whatever the truth may be, it was clear that the doll was not just a toy, but a conduit to another world. And as Martha continued to investigate, she began to experience strange and terrifying phenomena that she could not explain. She started having nightmares about the doll, vivid and disturbing dreams that left her shaken and confused. In her dreams, the doll would come alive and move on its own, its blank eyes staring directly at her, its porcelain face contorted in a silent scream. Martha would wake up in a cold sweat, her heart racing, only to find that the doll had somehow moved during the night. It was always sitting in the same spot on the shelf, but she could have sworn that she had seen it move. But it wasn't just in her dreams that Martha was seeing the doll move. Sometimes, when she was awake, she would catch a glimpse of it moving on its own. She would see the slight twitch of its eyelids, the subtle turn of its head. For a moment, she would think that she was losing her mind, that the stress of her grandmother's estate was finally getting to her. But then she would see the doll move again, and she would realize that she was not imagining things. As the days went by, the strange occurrences became more frequent and more intense. Martha would hear whispers in the dead of night, the sound of footsteps creaking on the floorboards above her head. She would feel a cold presence in the room with her, a feeling that she was being watched, judged, and when she turned around, she would see the doll staring at her, its blank eyes gleaming in the darkness. Martha tried to convince herself that it was all in her head, that the stress of her grandmother's passing, the pressure of settling her estate, was getting to her. But as the strange events continued to escalate, she began to fear that there was something more sinister at play. She tried to ignore the doll, to pretend that it wasn't there, but it seemed to be everywhere. She would see it sitting on the shelf, its eyes following her every move. She would feel its cold gaze upon her back when she turned away. In the end, Martha decided to take drastic measures. She packed up the doll and all of the other creepy items from her grandmother's house and took them to a local antique shop. She didn't want to sell the items, but she couldn't bear the thought of leaving them in her grandmother's house, knowing that they were somehow connected to her death. At the antique shop, Martha met with a man named Edgar, who had a reputation for dealing in cursed or haunted items. Martha explained what had happened and offered to sell the doll and the other items to him for a fair price. But Edgar refused to buy them, claiming that he couldn't take the risk of bringing such dark objects into his shop. Martha was disappointed, but she respected Edgar's decision and took the items home again. Days turned into weeks, and the strange events in Martha's life began to fade away. She tried to put the doll and the other items out of her mind, focusing instead on her work and her friends. But she never forgot about the creepy doll and the unsettling feeling that it had given her. One day, Martha was going through her late grandmother's personal belongings when she came across a hidden compartment in one of her writing desks. Inside the compartment, she found a diary and several old photographs. As she began to read through the diary entries, she realized that her grandmother's obsession with death and the occult had been even greater than she had imagined. The diary entries spoke of strange rituals, of sacrifices made to dark entities, and of a growing madness that consumed her grandmother's thoughts. Among the photographs, Martha found one that made her blood run cold. It was a picture of her grandmother standing next to the very same doll that she had found in the attic. But what truly made the photograph disturbing was the look on her grandmother's face. She was smiling, but it was a twisted, evil smile that sent shivers down Martha's spine. As Martha continued to delve into her grandmother's past, she uncovered a horrifying truth. Her grandmother had not simply been obsessed with death. She had actively sought it out, embracing it as a way of life. She had studied the occult, learning everything she could about summoning demons and raising the dead. And it was this knowledge that had led her to the doll, which she believed was a conduit to another world, a world where death had no meaning and the only thing that mattered was power. Martha was horrified by what she was discovering, but she was also intrigued. She couldn't help but wonder what her grandmother had seen in the doll, what had compelled her to embrace death so fully. As she held the doll in her hands, she felt a surge of power, a dark, intoxicating energy that seemed to flow through her veins. In that moment, she understood why her grandmother had become so obsessed. The doll was a gateway to a world beyond our own, a world where anything was possible. But Martha was not like her grandmother. She did not want to embrace death, but she was afraid of what might happen if she let the doll's power consume her. So she made a decision. She would destroy the doll, severing the connection between her family and the dark forces that it represented. With trembling hands, Martha took the doll into the attic, where she had found it, and smashed it against the floor. As the doll shattered, she could have sworn that she heard a scream, a sound that chilled her to the bone. But when she looked around, there was no one else in the attic. Had she imagined it? Or was it the spirit of the doll, trapped for so long, finally set free? In the aftermath, Martha packed up her grandmother's belongings and prepared to sell the house. She didn't want to keep anything that was connected to her grandmother's dark past, not even the doll's shattered pieces. She threw them in the trash, along with the diary and the photographs. And so, the mystery of the creepy doll came to an end. Or did it? Years later, Martha would find herself drawn back to her grandmother's house. Haunted by the memories of what had happened there, she would walk through the rooms, trying to piece together the puzzle of her grandmother's obsession, wondering if the doll was somehow still out there waiting to be found. Or perhaps it's best not to dwell on the past and let some mysteries remain unsolved. That was the story of a creepy doll that came alive. And if you liked this video, then check out these other videos.